Welcome to the show. Before we get started, please make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the like so that we know what sort of content to bring you. I was having an interesting conversation with a friend that works in the PR department at Nat Geo. That's National Geographic. And I love their shows, Naked and Afraid, and all kinds of survival programs where you get to see what it takes to make it out there without life's basic essentials. So we talked about 4 survival myths that could actually get you killed. Spend enough time in the outdoors, and you're bound to wonder how you would handle a true survival scenario. Could you gather and forage enough food? Could you build a strong survival shelter to keep you warm and dry? Could you start a fire in the pouring rain? These are the skills of a total outdoors person. But there are nearly as many survival myths out there are skills. And some of these myths could lead to disaster. And when what hits the fan. Here are 4 of those myths and what you can learn from them to help prepare you for whatever the wild throws your way. Here's myth number 1. That you can live solely off natural survival foods. So people think, hey, we'll just flip to the wild edibles section of a survival book and it will show you how to harvest, in a tree bark for food, or how to boil and reboil lily pad tubers and skunk cabbage so they're palatable. You also learn that hemlock needles are edible, plus how to cook and eat snails and so on. These are considered survival foods, but actually snails in a lot of places are a common delicacy. But because there are things that are edible that you wouldn't likely eat in a normal situation, the myth here is that you can survive off them for an extended length of time. But the reality is, if you are only eating survival foods, you'll start feeling sick and weak after a day or 2. Some of these survival foods also have little to zero caloric value, which makes them pointless to eat. Think about that. They sound like it's something that you can survive on, but actually, after a couple days, that doesn't work anymore. So, this isn't to say that you shouldn't learn as much as you can about what's edible in the wild, because in a true survival situation, you're going to have to forage at some point. Just don't plan on surviving off these foods entirely, because it's impossible. Myth number 2. You can complete survival projects at a normal pace. Another fun section in any survival book are the chapters on projects. One's sort of laden with drawings of primitive traps, fire pit designs, and various shelters. When you look at these projects, you might think you can do them all in a survival situation. It's not true. The myth here lies in the lack of understanding we have regarding the amount of time it takes to gather supplies, catch and hunt food, and then clean your food, cut wood, and cook and eat a sustainable number of calories each day. After you've done all this work, you only have a couple of hours left at the end of the day to work on projects such as shelter improvements or setting traps. The same project that you could bang out in a couple of days at home when you have access to tools and food to fuel you through your work can take a couple of weeks in the wild. Animals aren't just sitting there waiting for you to catch them. It takes a lot of effort when you're not at the supermarket. The lesson here is on focus. Careful observation of the resources in your environment will dictate what's possible and what the most important things are to spend your time on. So your decision could be the difference between life and death. Be careful out there, guys. Myth number 3. If you kill a big game animal, you're set for food. If you think that, the hundreds of pounds of meat from a moose alone will be enough to keep you fed and alive for weeks and weeks, think again. Your body can't digest protein without fat. I'll say that again. Your body can't digest protein without fat. And you can develop protein poisoning without it. Rabbit starvation and the French-Canadian term mal de caribou, caribou sickness, are common colloquialisms for protein poisoning. Basically, no matter how many rabbits, snails, limpets, or venison steaks you eat, you can still starve to death because your body can't digest all of that protein without fat. That is one of the reasons why beaver hunting and trapping was so key to many North American indigenous people for so long, because beavers are fatty. So that's why they went after them. The fat from a black bear would have been utmost importance too. So the survival lesson here is that fat is much more precious in the survival situation than most would think, because it allows you to digest lean meats. Fat can be the difference between life and death in all but the most hospitable environments. Myth number 4. Practicing survival skills is the same as practicing survival. Knowing how to make a friction fire or how to whittle a paddle out of a log or how to knap stone arrowheads all have their place in survival situations, particularly fire making. That's what you need to keep you warm. You can practice these things as much as you want, but the one survival skill that would trump all of these skills is the one that you can't learn on YouTube. It's the skill of just being able to rough it. Sometimes you can go to what was normally known as a third world country or a developing country and realize that just the normal life there is uninhabitable and hard for you to hack. You can't deal with the things that they deal with on the daily. So this is a skill that only comes with experience. One indicator that you have this skill is you notice that you're still having fun in a situation that others are complaining about. So while others are experiencing discomfort, let's say in an area where there are a lot of bugs or mosquitoes, where you can't survive, or you're very uncomfortable, they're still happy. So again, I'll say, this is a skill that only comes with experience. One indicator that you have, this skill is you notice that you're still having fun in a situation others are complaining about. This is very important. Accumulated experience in remote areas really lets you know when something like feeling cold, getting cut, or eating something rotten is actually a concern and when it's not. So you know when to be concerned and when not to be. When you get to this point, it may appear to others that you enjoy misery, but you don't. It's just that it's not miserable to you anymore. The myth here is assuming that practicing survival and bushcraft skills is good enough to prepare you for a real survival situation. But the truth is that this will not get you very far. You need to find controlled situations where you can't just run back into the house when it starts raining. Plan thought out trips that will produce real outdoor scenarios when you need to use these survival skills. These scenarios may not be fun at the time, but they will build character and confidence. So much of survival is a mental game. Think of somebody living in the wild and they have no way to actually be indoors. This is their everyday life. They're used to it. Being out there for a short period of time after being used to sleeping on a comfortable bed, being in a hotel, having cooking gas and things of that sort of nature changes the game. So a lot of it is a mental game. And what is truly hard often has a lot more to do with your mindset than your physical prowess, or a skill set that you might have learned in an out of context environment. That's why you see on Naked and Afraid, a lot of people tap out after maybe just the first night or a day or two. In other words, you might be the quickest draw at the Wild West show, but how good are you when somebody is shooting back at you? That brings us to the end of this episode. Thanks for tuning in. As always, hit the subscribe and like the video. Head over to buymeacoffee.com/SamsonKing to make a small donation. We appreciate it. And as always, thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you next time.